The moon hung like a wounded lantern over the forest, its dim glow painting silver outlines on the towering trees. Beneath that cold light, a young goblin girl named Vallina trudged barefoot through the wet soil, clutching a small pouch of herbs and berries to her chest. Her green skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight, her long white hair brushing against her shoulders as the wind whispered through the leaves. At only 16, Vallina had already lived the life of an outcast. She was different, too tall, too graceful, and far too human-looking for her kind. Among goblins this was a curse. They called her the Tall Shadow, a living omen said to attract the eyes of humans, their oldest enemies. When she was 10, the age when goblins are considered fully grown, her tribe had gathered beneath the black oak tree and cast her out. The memory was carved into her mind like a scar. Their cruel words, their fearful stares, her mother's tearful silence. That night, the forest had become her home. For 6 long years she'd survived alone, learning which roots healed and which poisoned, learning to hide her scent from hunters, learning to whisper her thoughts to the wind because no one else would listen. And though her heart still longed for a gentle voice, a friend, or even a stranger who might smile at her without fear, she had begun to believe it would never happen. But fate, cruel as it was, still had a strange sense of mercy. That evening, as she crouched by a trench gathering night-blooming herbs, the ground beneath her softened. The earth crumbled with a loud crack, and before she could move she slipped, tumbling into darkness. Her small body swung to a stop, tangled in thick vines that dug into her arms and legs. "Ah!" she cried, wincing as pain shot through her. The trench wasn't deep, but steep enough that climbing out was impossible. She struggled against the vines until her strength gave way. Tears stung her eyes. "Help. Is anyone there? Please." Her voice echoed weakly across the forest. No answer, just the whisper of rain beginning to fall. But just when her hope began to fade, the crunch of footsteps came through the mud. A beam of light, a flashlight, cut through the darkness. And then she saw him. A human boy, maybe her age, with dark eyes and long brown hair tied in a loose ponytail. His jacket was soaked from the rain, but his gaze held a spark of courage. He breathed, stunned. You're a goblin?" Vallina flinched. Please, don't hurt me." He hesitated, gripping the handle of his machete. But instead of raising it, he climbed down carefully, eyes full of wonder rather than hate. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said softly. "Hold still." Within moments he began cutting away the vines. The rain grew heavier, soaking them both, but he didn't stop until the last strand fell free. Vallina gasped, clutching a vine to steady herself, and then let go. She fell straight into his arms. For a long second neither of them moved. Her heart pounded against his chest. His eyes, dark and wide, met her own glowing emerald ones. You're beautiful," he murmured before realizing what he'd said. Color rushed to his face as he quickly set her down. Vallina's cheeks burned. No one had ever called her that before. She looked up at him, rain dripping from her hair. "You don't think I'm a monster?" He gave her a half-smile. "If you are, then you're the prettiest monster I've ever seen." That was the night a lonely goblin girl fell into the arms of a human boy, and the world for the first time didn't feel so cruel. The rain had not stopped since that night. It came in sheets, drumming gently on the canopy of Peter's small camping tent. The fire he had managed to build earlier had long died out, leaving only the faint glow of a lantern to cast soft light on the 2 figures inside. Vallina sat quietly, her knees drawn up to her chest, wrapped in a thick blanket Peter had given her. The warmth of it, and the warmth of his kindness, still felt foreign to her. No one had ever shared anything with her before, much less a place to rest. Peter, sitting across from her, was trying his best not to stare. He had seen strange things on his family's camping trips with his dad. Wild animals, beautiful landscapes, but never a goblin girl who looked more human than monster. Her eyes were the color of forest dew, and her voice was soft, uncertain, like a melody that didn't believe it was worth being heard. "So," he started awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck, "you've really been living out there, all by yourself?" Vallina nodded, her white hair catching the light. "Since I was 10. Goblins like me, the tall ones, are bad luck. They say we bring death and misfortune. So they cast me out." Peter frowned, shaking his head. "That's awful." She smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed her sadness. "Maybe they were right. Humans hate goblins and goblins hate me. I guess I was never meant to belong anywhere. Hey. His tone softened almost instinctively. You belong here tonight. You're safe now. Vallina blinked. No one had ever said that to her before. You're safe. Those words melted into her heart like warm honey. When the thunder rolled again, she flinched, and Peter noticed. Without saying a word, he shifted closer, wrapping his arm gently around her shoulders. She stiffened at first, but the moment she felt his warmth, something inside her gave way. Her head slowly rested against his chest. His heartbeat, steady, calm, and real, was unlike anything she had known. No fear. No hatred. Just comfort. Peter smiled softly, pulling the blanket around both of them. You must be cold. She hesitated, her voice trembling. I didn't think humans could be this kind. He chuckled quietly. Not all of us are bad. They sat in silence after that, the rhythm of the rain filling the tent. At some point, exhaustion took over and Vallina's breathing slowed against him. Peter felt her hand, small, trembling, slide over his chest as she fell asleep. For the first time in years, she didn't dream of running. For the first time, she felt safe in someone's arms. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside that small tent, something fragile and beautiful had begun to bloom. Morning came softly, breaking through the mist that clung to the forest like an old memory. The rain had stopped and sunlight filtered gently through the tent flap, spilling golden warmth across Vallina's face. She stirred, her cheek still pressed against Peter's chest, and blinked. For a moment she forgot where she was. The warmth, the comfort, the peace, it didn't feel real. But then she felt his heartbeat, steady and calm beneath her ear, and she remembered. She had fallen asleep in the arms of a human boy. Peter opened his eyes to find her already watching him, her green skin glowing faintly in the morning light. For a second neither spoke. Their silence wasn't awkward, it was soft and full, like two souls still trying to understand why they suddenly felt less alone. Morning, Peter said finally, smiling. Morning, Vallina replied, her voice quiet but lighter than before. He sat up, stretching. You must be hungry. I've got some granola bars and fruit left. Her stomach answered before she could, and they both laughed, a sound that echoed warmly in the still forest. Peter handed her a bar, watching her unwrap it carefully, as if it were a sacred offering. Peter, she said after a few bites, what happens now? You can't stay here with me forever. I wasn't planning to, he said with a grin, then turned serious. I want to take you home. Her eyes widened. Home? But your people, they'll hate me. I'm not like you. He looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes full of quiet resolve. Maybe not. But you're kind. You're brave. You deserve to be somewhere you can live without hiding. My parents, they'll be shocked, sure, but they'll understand once they see who you are. Vallina looked down, her fingers curling around the blanket. You really think so? I know so. He smiled. You saved me from a boring camping trip. Now it's my turn to save you from loneliness. Those words hit her harder than she expected. Her chest ached, but this time it wasn't from sadness. It was hope, fragile but alive. They packed up together and began the long walk toward the main road. Vallina kept glancing around nervously, hiding behind Peter whenever she heard voices or saw the distant shapes of passing cars. When they finally reached his home, her heart pounded. It was a modest suburban house, warm and alive, the kind of place she'd only ever seen from a distance. Peter turned to her and took her hand. Stay behind me at first, okay? She nodded, her entire body trembling. He opened the door. Mom? Dad? I brought someone. Carl and Lucy appeared from the kitchen. Carl froze mid-step, Lucy's eyes widening as she dropped the dish towel in her hands. For a long, painful moment, no one spoke. Then Peter stepped aside, revealing Vallina, tall, nervous, her green skin almost glowing under the kitchen light. Lucy gasped softly, covering her mouth. Carl instinctively moved forward, protective. Peter, son, Carl began carefully. What is this? Peter swallowed. Dad, this is Vallina. She's my friend. She needed help. Vallina lowered her head, expecting anger, rejection, fear. But Lucy, after a moment's hesitation, stepped closer. Her voice was gentle. Are you hurt, dear? Vallina looked up in disbelief. No. Just scared. Carl exhaled, still tense but softening. You're a goblin, aren't you? She nodded weakly. Yes. Lucy reached out, and to Peter's surprise, brushed a strand of Vallina's white hair behind her ear. Well, goblin or not, if my son says you need a place to stay, then this house has room. Tears welled in Vallina's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Peter smiled proudly at her reaction. Told you they'd understand. And for the first time in her life, Vallina stepped across a human threshold, not as a monster but as a guest. The first night at Peter's home was strange for Vallina, not because of danger but because of peace. The house smelled like cinnamon and warmth. The walls didn't echo with whispers of fear. And the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, and the sound of laughter from Peter's parents downstairs all felt safe. Peter had set up a small tent in the backyard, partly because Vallina wasn't used to sleeping indoors yet, and partly because she said she wanted to see the stars. They sat together inside the tent, just as they had the night they met. But this time, it wasn't rain that filled the silence. It was the quiet rhythm of crickets and the distant hum of city lights. Vallina looked up through the open flap, her green skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. They look so close, she whispered. The stars. Like you could reach out and touch them. Peter smiled, lying back beside her. My dad used to say they're wishes that learn to shine. She giggled softly. Do you think goblins have stars too? I think everyone does, he said simply. Some of us just forget to look. Vallina turned her head to study him. His eyes were calm and steady, reflecting the same starlight that danced across her own. The silence between them was comfortable, something rare and beautiful. After a while, Peter noticed she was shivering. Hey, he said, lifting the blanket, come closer, you'll freeze out here. I'm fine, she murmured, though her teeth betrayed her. He chuckled quietly and slid an arm around her shoulder, pulling her gently against him. She hesitated only for a second before giving in, curling into his warmth. It wasn't like before. That first night had been survival. This felt different, softer, realer. She could feel his heartbeat again, steady, protective. His chest rose and fell slowly, and every breath brushed against her hair like a promise she didn't know she needed. Peter whispered, You know, you don't have to be afraid of being close to people anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. I've spent my whole life being told I'm cursed. Every time I touched someone they looked at me like I was poison. Then they were wrong, he said firmly. You're not poison, Vallina. You're human where it matters most. Her throat tightened. But I'm not human. He smiled. Then I guess I'm lucky to know the kind of beauty humans don't have. The words hit her heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. She blinked fast, trying not to cry, and instead of replying she nestled closer, her head resting on his chest again. Peter's hand brushed over her shoulder, warm and firm. His touch didn't feel hesitant or fearful. It felt safe. She sighed softly. Your warmth, it's so strange. It feels like it's wrapping around me. He chuckled. That's just me trying to keep you safe. And there, beneath a blanket of stars and moonlight, she closed her eyes. For the first time in forever, she slept not as an exile or a curse, but as a girl held in the arms of someone who truly cared. Outside, the night whispered through the trees, a lullaby for two souls who had finally found each other. The first week of school had been a storm that Vallina wasn't ready for. Peter had convinced his parents, and eventually the school board, to let her attend under special circumstances. His mother even made her some long-sleeve dresses to help her blend in a bit. But humans, as she learned, didn't need to see green skin to find a reason to whisper. By the third day the laughter started. The mocking looks. The murmurs that spread faster than fire. Isn't that the goblin girl? She's dating Peter, can you imagine? Look at her hair. It's too white. Too weird. Every insult felt like a thorn pressing into her chest. Peter tried to defend her. He stood up for her in the halls, ignored the stares, and even shouted at a group of boys who made her cry. But no matter how much he tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that she was a burden. That maybe everyone else had been right all along. By Friday evening she couldn't take it anymore. She sat alone in Peter's backyard, the stars above blurry through her tears. The world had gone quiet, except for the sound of her soft sobbing. She didn't hear him approach until he was standing behind her. Vallina? She quickly wiped her face and looked away. Please, Peter, just go. He crouched down beside her, concern etched all over his face. "You've been crying all week. Tell me what's wrong." Her voice broke. "It's me. I don't belong here. No matter how much I try, they'll never see me as anything but a monster. I heard them laughing again today, calling me your pet." Peter froze, anger flickering in his eyes. "They don't know what they're talking about." She shook her head, tears falling again. "Maybe they do. You should give up on me, Peter. Before they start hating you too." He stared at her for a long moment, and then, without a word, reached out and took her face gently in his hands. "Vallina," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion, "I could never give up on you." Before she could respond, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't unsure. It was warm, deep, full of every feeling he'd been too afraid to say. Her eyes widened in shock, but then her heart melted. The pain, the shame, the endless loneliness, it all dissolved in that moment. When he finally pulled away, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said softly. "From the moment I found you in that trench, I knew. You're not a curse, Vallina. You're my miracle." Her lips trembled. "Peter, you can't love me." He silenced her with a gentle finger on her lips. "You're you. That's all I need." Her tears returned, but this time they were tears of joy. She buried her face in his chest, holding on to him as though the world would vanish if she let go. For the first time in her life, she wasn't hiding. She was loved, wholly, fiercely, and without hesitation. And as the night wrapped around them, their hearts beat in the same rhythm. One human, one goblin, two souls who had found something purer than either world could understand. Years passed like petals drifting on the wind. The world changed, not all at once but in small, stubborn ways. After that night, Peter and Vallina became inseparable. They walked the halls together, no longer hiding. At first, people whispered louder, crueler, but when they saw Peter refuse to let go of her hand, when they saw how her quiet kindness never faded, the laughter slowly turned into curiosity. And curiosity in time became acceptance. By graduation, Vallina was no longer the goblin girl. She was simply Vallina, the strange, bright girl who painted stars on the walls of the art room and always smiled when Peter played guitar for her. Lucy often said, "That girl has more heart than half the world," and Carl, who once froze at her sight, came to see her as the daughter he never had. After school, Peter studied environmental science, while Vallina worked with plants, learning to heal the earth she had once hidden in. Together they built a quiet life, one rooted in love, laughter, and the belief that even the most broken souls could bloom again. One golden morning, in the same forest where they first met, Peter took her hand and led her to a clearing. "Do you remember this place?" he asked, smiling. She looked around, the trees, the faint scent of rain in the soil. "Of course. You found me here." He nodded, his eyes glinting. "And I want this to be where I never lose you." Then he knelt, pulling a small silver ring from his pocket. "Vallina, will you marry me?" Her breath caught. The girl who was once exiled for being different now stood before a boy who saw her as the most beautiful soul alive. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "1,000 times yes." The forest seemed to sigh with them. A breeze danced through the leaves, carrying their laughter through the woods. The same woods that had once been her prison, now her witness. Years later, their small cottage sat at the edge of that same forest, wrapped in wildflowers and sunlight. Vallina sat by the window, rocking a small child in her arms, a boy with his father's soft brown hair and her emerald green eyes. Peter walked in quietly, wrapping his arms around them both. "He has your smile," he murmured against her ear. She laughed softly. "And your stubbornness." He kissed her cheek, his voice filled with wonder. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" She nodded, looking down at their sleeping son. "Sometimes I still wonder if I'm dreaming." Peter smiled. "Then I hope you never wake up." Outside, the stars began to rise, the same stars they once lay beneath in a little backyard tent. The world had once called her a curse. But now she was proof that love, real, selfless love, could rewrite destiny itself. And as Peter kissed her softly, their child stirred, cooing faintly. Vallina whispered to him, her voice tender and full of peace. "You'll never be alone, little one. Because love found us first."